Hello. Yeah. Hello. Okay, here we go. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the May meeting of the Historic Conservation Commission. I'm Gary Lader, Chair of the HCC, and I would like to introduce the commission. To my left is Jeffrey Long, our Historic Officer and Registered Architect. To my far left is Craig Evans, resident of the district. Next to me is Roger Hudak, resident of the district. And then we have to my right Desiree Strasser, resident of the Mount Airy district, and Todd Chambers, architect and here in our district, business representative. And then Mike Simonson to my far right, chief building inspector for the city of Bethlehem. A little bit of ordinance information is the purpose and intent of the city of Bethlehem to promote, enhance, and preserve historic resources and traditional community character for the education, cultural, economic, and general welfare of the public through the preservation, protection, and regulation of buildings and areas of historic interest or importance within the city, which have been determined to be of local, state, or national significance. The way the meeting will unfold is the applicants will be taken in order. After identifying the project address and the presenters, our historic officer will provide a background on the building and any recommendations. At that time, the applicant will present their project and plan. The board will then address the project, allow public comment, if any, and ultimately create a motion to approve as presented, approve with modifications, table the project with clearer recommendations, or deny the project with reasons for the denial and changes or improvements which would result in a positive recommendation. For public comment, there is a 3-minute time limit, and comments must be specific to attributes of the building only. Speakers are to announce themselves with their name and address before speaking. The HCC is a recommending board, and the results of our meeting will be presented to City Council, and their vote will be binding. Please do not forget to secure your permit from the permit office on the first floor of City Hall before you begin your project. Above all, I remind everyone to conduct themselves in a civil manner and always use a civil tone. The commission is here to help you with your project. We are a group of volunteers who are dedicated to historic preservation and restoration of older buildings in Bethlehem and beyond. If any commission members have a conflict of interest with any of the applications on tonight's agenda, please come forth at this time. And are there any conflicts here? No, not tonight. With that, we will go to our first agenda item, which is 312 East 3rd Street. Is that you gentlemen? Okay, and you can take the desk here and, just sign in and announce your name, and then Jeff will begin.
Sure. Can you guys hear me? All right. My name's Ali. I'm with FX Company from 874 North Gilmore Street in Allentown.
Thanks for joining us, Ali.
Thanks for having me.
So 312 East 3rd Street. This structure is a 3-story commercial building with an acrylic hard coat stucco finish in a taupe color that was applied to all the facades. It has a flat roof and the stylized upper cornices that define flat parapets. There's an arched recessed entrance and accompanying arch supported by corbel brackets at the upper cornice, delineating the central building section, which also has narrow arched windows. The entry level has a series of aluminum storefronts with several entrances into various commercial tenants. The windows at the upper floor levels are also aluminum storefront type frames, but they have applied horizontal trim for a false meeting rail to give the appearance of 1/1 double hung windows. The center section and both end sections set back from East 3rd Street. Built in circa 2005, this structure is a contemporary building and therefore non-contributing to the Historic Conservation District. However, it references late Victorian detailing found throughout South Bethlehem. The applicant proposes to install a channel letter sign with the business logo and the name. Because this building is not contributing, I did not utilize any of the Secretary of Interior standards for my assessment. So the guideline citations reference the Bethlehem ordinance that Mr. Lader read at the beginning of tonight's meeting, as well as the specific design guidelines for signage for within the Historic Conservation District. My evaluation, the effects on the district and recommendations. The certificate of appropriateness application indicates the intent to install one 54-inch tall by 246-inch wide internally illuminated sign centered horizontally and vertically within the sign band above the entrance for a new commercial tenant. The proposed sign is fabricated by attaching 5-inch thick aluminum channel letters onto a 6mm aluminum composite material backer. There are proposed 3/8-inch stud screws that will fasten the backer into the existing facade, with spacers resulting in a 1-inch gap between the back of the sign and the facade. Interior illumination is accomplished with LED lights. At the left of the sign is a Rooster Head corporate logo that's outlined in black color and surrounded by flames outlined in bright red color, with a background in bright white color and a 3-inch thick black outline. The logo is followed by the words Sizzling Bites in large, bold, sans serif, all uppercase lettering. All letters are bright white in color with 3-inch thick black outline. Center beneath the words, beneath those words are the words Halal Grill in small, bold, sans serif, all uppercase lettering. All lettering is bright white in color with bright red background and 2.5-inch thick black outline. The relevant design guidelines for signage do not define a thickness that's appropriate within the district. So I did a visual inventory of what have been indicated as appropriate signs by the commission throughout the district. And they indicated typical thickness of maximum 2 inches. There are exceptions, but this commission typically, because there are no specifics in the guidelines, you've recommended appropriate is 2 inches or less. The guidelines continue that internal illumination for signage is not appropriate within the district, as are visible conduits, raceways, or junction boxes for needed illumination. Though not defined within the guidelines, HCC traditionally discourages bright white color within the district and also lettering that's outlined in other colors. Again, neither is defined in the guidelines, but looking at your previous recommendations for appropriate signage, typically bright white, you've asked the applicant to revisit, and also thick outlines around letters. Those guidelines do describe appropriate signage as flat logos and flat lettering that would be applied to a rigid backer and installed flush with the building facade. Or they could be individual letters and logos that are pin mounted directly into the building facades. Those are the two typical sign approaches that are defined within the guidelines. HCT traditionally encourages signage to include a thin offset pinstripe detail around the perimeter of a rigid backer if they go that route in a complementary color, and that would be an alternative, appropriate alternative to the current proposal of thick outlines for in different colors for the lettering. So based upon the design guidelines and the previous recommendations by the commission for appropriate signage, the proposed signage is not appropriate. An appropriate sign should not be internally illuminated. That's the first thing. There are 3 gooseneck light fixtures there already, so I'm assuming that those would be sufficient for illuminating purposes for the new sign. The appropriate sign would also include either a rigid backer that's installed flush with the facade or individual letters that are pin mounted into the facade. Appropriate lettering and logo would be limited to 2 inches in thickness with a preference for a flush installation. The proposed thick block outline should be replaced with an offset pinstripe detail around the sign perimeter in a complementary color, while, as I stated before, HCC typically requests applicants to reconsider bright white to perhaps a warm white or an ivory.
Okay, thank you, Jeffrey. Ali, do these recommendations make sense to you?
Some do. I do have some questions. I just want to make sure you guys understand the structure of the sign and how we plan to build it.
Can you help us with one simple thing first?
The
I don't
chair,
know why
right?
that chair is there.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
thinking the same thing.
I-
but I just
Oh,
want-
you know what? Because it was originally next to you, wasn't it? Okay.
I don't know where it was, but
Okay.
yeah. Oh, that's where it was.
All right,
but I
that
just didn't want to
helps.
touch it on
Okay,
my own.
thanks.
So the black outline around the letters, that's that would be the channel letters would be mounted to that, flush mounted to that. So that's not like an outline of each individual letter. So there's a 5-inch gap between the letters and the back of that black backboard there. So I don't know if, it's hard to see in a 2D image.
Is that the 6mm ACM panel?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yep.
thank you.
That's what that is. Yep. So, and the reason for that is the customer originally wanted it to be backlit as well as internally lit, kind of like a halo effect.
Okay.
And that's why we wanted that off the wall. So there's something for the lights to shine, for that space for the lights to shine. But I'm open to recommendations and kind of seeing how we can make this thing work out for them and their business.
All right, so the channel lettering that actually is 5 inches thick, but it's just off of a
So the-
backer?
So the coil that the aluminum comes on is 5.3 inches. Then we do about 1/4 inch or 0.3 inches to bend it, and that's what gives us the space inside to put the aluminum backing for the letter.
Mhm.
And then the front will obviously be acrylic or polycarbonate plastic. That's just a standard channel letter.
Okay,
And there is some photos I did, put in front of you guys. This C23 ink. This place is actually in the same building right next door, and that's an internally lit channel letter sign. And then there's also another further down from C23 ink, which is about 2 doors down to the left of 312 Sizzling Bites, is California Tan, which is a backlit, or what looks to be a backlit. I was there during the day, unfortunately. Couldn't see any wires, but it's an off mount. It's not a flush mount sign on the same building as well.
yeah, I remember seeing the C23 come before us. I think I remember the California Tan one though, and we do allow the backlit LED backlit,
Like the halo
the
effect.
halo effect,
Mhm.
but the internally lit, we always turn people away from that.
Sure. Okay. I mean, if we can do the backlit, the halo effect,
Mhm.
I don't see them, the customer is going to, I think, more than likely be okay with that.
Okay.
Because like it was mentioned, there are 3 gooseneck light fixtures. I believe this was Dinky's Ice Cream previous to Sizzling
Oh.
Bites,
Okay,
and they had a flat panel sign with those lights illuminating from the
Yeah.
face.
okay,
So I think we'd be okay with that.
great. Any other comments or questions here?
So I did a quick zoning review, and I believe that this sign is far larger than what you're going to be permitted to put on this storefront. So I'd
Okay.
encourage you to go back and look at that
Sure.
before coming back, because you're going to need to go for zoning anyway to get it approved. But it would help us, I think, probably understand exactly how big this is and how it's going to impact this
What
building.
like how is that based on, just for my educational?
So there's a zoning ordinance for signage,
Yeah.
and I mean, I haven't done a thorough review,
Sure,
but
I
I
do.
think you're allowed 2 square feet per linear foot of storefront.
Of space.
So that would get you 52 square feet, where you're at like 92 right now. So again, this is super preliminary. I just did some quick research.
Oh, I gotcha. Now let me ask you this: the square footage, would that be based off the overall height of the largest or total square
Usually you have
footage?
to draw a box around it. Again,
And that's
I
kind
don't
of
know.
Yep.
That's,
okay. So like for example, just for me. just
So
I
your
know.
signage area is 4.5 feet tall by
It's going off
20,
of this
20
height,
and a
little-
half feet.
Yep,
So
okay,
4.5
I
by
gotcha.
20 and a half. If
Okay.
you made that flame logo smaller, you'd obviously reduce the.
We can definitely do
square
that.
footage
I
pretty
mean,
significantly,
we
yeah.
we could bring it down. That's not an issue.
Yeah. How does everybody feel about the internally lit letters? Because we
I think we need to avoid those.
typically don't allow those. Typically, it's something that's solid. We have approved, I think, an LED backlight, right, to give you a halo around that,
Sure.
Yes, we
Yeah.
have.
but not
In fact,
internal.
in that area, several
Right.
different times as businesses have changed. The other thing that I think is somewhat worth talking about is the the bright white color versus a warm white or
Okay.
just a slightly off white. Our experience is that bright white gets dirty fast and it just looks bad.
Mhm.
If it's slightly toned down, looks better longer, which is an
Sure.
advantage to the, to the business.
Okay.
I'm not saying that you want to go away from you want the contrast and it wants to kind of look white, but
Right.
the real bright white has some drawbacks.
Sure. I mean, I don't see a problem with that either. We can apply a vinyl to the acrylic, and we can do something similar to like a PPF is what they call for like the car wrap stuff. We could do the same thing to the face where it would dim down that white so it's not so loud.
What about the 5-inch depth? That's, again, that's deeper than typically permitted
So-
also.
So are you able to do this, just listening to Jeff's recommendations, are you able to do a 2-inch profile and still do the backlighting?
That's going to be very tough for us. So the thickness is, I know you said you don't remember this sign coming through here, but the C23 ink sign,
Mhm.
this would be the same thickness, that coil.
Okay,
So that's a really good 3D representation of
And C23 is directly next to.
right next door. Yeah.
Okay.
So there's like
I'd
the
be fine
building
with the
entrance.
5-inch if-
There's the
if it
main
matches what's
entryway
next
into the
door.
building.
Mhm.
Sizzling Bites would be on the right if you're facing, and C23 is on the left.
Thank you.
Okay. So just for a clarification here,
Sure.
when I'm looking at this picture here,
Mhm.
C23 isn't over here, is it?
No, it's to the left.
Okay,
It's
so
in the
it's
commercial
another,
space. Yeah.
okay, thanks.
Yeah, so this Sizzling Bites is on the furthest side on the right of the building. There's nothing
Okay,
past it to the right.
well, I'd like to make a motion for the applicant at 312 East Third Street, Suite 102, that we approve this project with the following conditions. That the applicant will only do LED backlighting, not internally lit. That the channel lettering is in an off-white, not bright white. That the size of the overall signage will comply with zoning, which is a separate review. And we will approve the 5-inch thick channels in this case only because it apparently seems to be similar to existing adjacent signage on a non-contributing building. In addition, this will be installed without visible conduit, and you'll make use of the existing gooseneck lighting.
Yes.
Does anybody have anything to add to that?
I second.
Okay, thank you.
The one thing that I would recommend we add to it is to get a cut sheet or a scale drawing after the zoning approval, so we have a final size
Okay,
sign in our records.
thank you. That makes a lot of sense. So Jeff will add that to the motion.
And is there any need to determine the warmth of lighting?
I think we're usually asking for warm lighting at 3000 K. I don't know if that's typical for our signage too.
Yeah, I
Probably
would
should
say
be, right?
3000 K or below or lower.
Okay,
Well, for the halo lit?
Yes,
the-
right.
yes.
So we were thinking red, if that's okay. That's pretty warm. I can't get any warmer than red.
You're right. You're right about that. Yeah. And I think color and color temperature are related. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
they go together
The
sometimes.
All right.
white only the color temperature really only applies if it's white.
If it's like,
Okay.
yeah, like
We're
a
looking
cool
for
white.
red. I don't know. Is that like a pink color? Like we don't really have too much
Okay.
concern over
Yeah.
that.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I think your second still holds,
Yep.
and we'll put this to a vote. Craig Evans, Roger Hudak, I vote aye. Desiree Strasser,
Aye.
and Todd
Aye.
Chambers and Mike Simonson.
Aye.
And okay, motion carries. And again,
you, guys.
thank you for
Appreciate it.
your time with us.
My one suggestion to you would be when you submit for your permit application set, obviously bring down the scale drawings, but don't make anything until you get your zoning approval, if you know what I mean.
No, for sure.
Just,
Yeah.
I want to make sure your size
Yeah.
is
So
accurate.
we actually already submitted.
Okay.
That's kind of why we went backwards. So what I'll do is I'll get the engineer, Barry Cohen,
Yep.
to rescale it and then resubmit it.
All right.
All right. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Have a good night.
Okay, have a
Thank you.
good
You
night.
too.
Okay, so our next applicant is for 128 Rink Street.
There's nobody else here.
Oh, okay,
Let me go see if they're out, maybe out in the hallway. or
okay,
something.
all right. Jeff, assuming the applicant arrives, does it make sense to have 128 and 130 as two separate applications? It does,
I think so.
okay.
I think the same discussion would apply to both, right? They're looking to do the same.
It looks like the same scope
same
of work.
modifications to
That's-
both.
Yeah, that's why I was wondering.
I was going to ask your permission to do this. I was specifically told by the city they want two separate resolutions.
Oh,
Okay,
okay.
that's
well,
fine,
That
but it-
takes,
But
yeah,
we
that
can
takes
still
care of that.
have-
We can discuss it as
Context of the
one.
Yeah.
discussion is for both. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Right.
It's interesting. Last month we had a very similar situation: roofing, twin buildings, and they were one agenda item. So I questioned that,
Okay,
and the way these are filed in the city's database, it's by street number.
mm-hmm,
And they didn't like it that there was one resolution for two street numbers. So from
Okay.
here on out, they would prefer separate resolutions for adjacent street numbers, even if it's the same topic.
right. And I don't know, maybe they're different property owners, I don't know.
In this case, that no, and previously they weren't either.
Okay,
But especially in this case, I think it's potential relevance of agenda item on number 3 on number 2 is worth discussing both in tandem
okay,
in order to come to certain conclusions.
okay,
Without agenda item 3, you might come to one conclusion for number 2, perhaps. I don't know.
okay. All right, all right. The name is familiar. I feel like maybe this is someone who's been here before, but,
Yeah, we did. We had this one before. This is the one down by the post office.
okay,
I think she came in for the storefront before.
okay.
So I'm surprised she's not here, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and then it looks like 1318 Prospect Avenue. I don't see anyone here for that either.
On that, if we do get in touch with them prior to the next meeting that they show up, they should bring us product samples and a cut sheet on this proposed material.
Yeah, agreed.
Um,
On the Eratus decking,
Yeah. It's not
So-
one I'm familiar with.
it's a dead ringer for wood. I've
Oh,
used it
okay.
before, yeah.
It's probably like a composite.
It's a Trex, but you know, if you walked on it, you'd probably be hard pressed to tell it's better imitation than a Trex material,
Oh.
in my opinion. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, we have approved composite materials for trim and so
Sure.
on. It's not that we can't, but for those of us who are not in the trade
Yeah,
anymore,
I get it. Yeah.
I don't shop this stuff anymore, you know, it's,
Motion to adjourn?
Well,
we have to approve the minutes.
Did I jump the gun? Go ahead, Gary.
I think maybe just give whoever it is 5 minutes. Does that seem fair to
Sure.
everyone?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, we could have, we could, have a vote to approve minutes.
So moved.
Okay.
I'll second.
Second, thank you. We got that out of the way. Thank you.
Ready to vote?
Um,
Unanimous.
Yeah.
Yeah, I asked the cleaning crews in for the evening, and I asked them if anybody's even at the door knocking, and there was nobody out there. So
Mhm.
fortunately,
Yeah, this is kind of unusual. I don't think there's ever been like,
We occasionally
in a
have
row.
people who don't show up, but
yeah,
it's more often in January and February because
yeah.
we switch the meetings around or
What's the
whatever.
next day out?
yeah, we call them and notify them too prior to. It's not that we just give them the date and forget about them.
I have a question for the board, just as a point of discussion and consideration. We see GAF slate line as a proposed roofing material all the time, right, in the south side because it works.
Mhm.
Does it make sense to have a pre-approved list of materials like roofing, like porch flooring,
Absolutely.
right? That could be
The only problem with
you know,
that,
that Jeff could give an approval for.
the only problem with that is if there are ancillary things that have to happen to the roof.
Yeah.
You know, it's a question of valleys being open as opposed to woven.
Mm-hmm,
Um,
But you could
drip
almost come up with
edges
like an
and so
approved
on.
specification or something for a roof replacement.
Yeah. And we just have to be careful that we're consistent with this.
Right.
And they don't get a blanket approval for
Yeah.
a procedure that isn't necessarily something that we're looking for.
Yeah. Good points.
But the idea that we don't have to review it in the same intensity is a good one.
And that's something Mike's been talking to us about for a while.
Yeah.
You know, and actually, I guess I'm not even clear. I mean, you outlined for us some administrative approval kind of procedures, and you know, I thought that was pretty well worked out. And where are we with that?
It just never really got anywhere moving forward with, I could bring it back to the board and we can all discuss it and see if we want to make any changes, see if we want to update anything, and then I could pass it along and move it forward. It's just a resend of an email for me, you know what I mean? The work's done, so.
Were you looking for a vote or some further action from us all?
I think just a consensus that we all agree or are on the same page with it, and then I could take it to a committee meeting, council, and move it forward, and then ultimately it's their decision whether or not they want to pass it.
Yeah,
Um,
will it need to become part of the ordinance or will it be?
It will. The ordinance will have to be rewritten
Be an
to.
amendment.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
Well,
And there
we
was-
ought to- if we're going through the process to create some amendments, then we ought to think about any others that go on the laundry list.
Well, I made a bunch of changes to the ordinance and everything along with these administrative things. So what I'll do is before our next meeting, I'll email it out to everyone and say,
With it
everybody,
as an attachment.
yeah, like as an attachment, so everybody could look at it and then have time to digest it a little bit before we meet again, and then we can address any comments. I mean, we're not no hurry at this point, so we'll make sure we iron everything out to our liking before we present it further.
It's just really not been very easy to get the ordinance amended or, you know, make any changes. We've talked about some over the years.
Yeah,
So if we're in a process of doing something.
Yeah.
We need to load the bag.
yeah, and a lot of this stuff is outdated, and you know, some things needed updating, and some others, it's just some basic language need to be up. So I did all that, so I'll get it out, and you guys tell me what you think, and then we can kind of go from there. No feelings hurt if you don't like something or want something reworded.
Do you still have Phil Rader helping you?
Mhm.
Oh, okay, that's good to know.
Yep.
Great.
All right.
Well, any questions from the press? Okay, good. All right. Well, I say we go to 6:30 and
Agreed.
have a motion to adjourn. You know, the worst thing I hate to see happen, though, is then suddenly we have a pretty intense meeting with a bunch of these other things piled on top.
Well, they can get in the queue at the end. If they've missed a meeting.
Mike, one thing I was wondering about, I wanted to ask you, the property on the corner of Third, I guess it's right opposite, it's the beer store that was demolished, and I thought
Yes.
it was supposed to become an apartment building, and now it looks like the property's for sale.
It's recently been sold.
Okay.
So there's a new developer who took over that project.
Okay.
So I'm waiting for the plans to come in relatively quickly now.
I guess what has me confused about that is, I guess the old developer must have submitted the whole 9 yards for construction documents for that other building to be demolished. And, it's just kind of surprising that this happened. I mean, not that what they tore down was all that spectacular, but, it has me, kind of wondering how something like that could happen.
Well, it's my understanding that the new developer bought the project as we approved it.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's like a turnkey. they're taking
So it
over.
was just kind of like the original developer did all the legwork to get the building knocked down and a building approved for the site. And now the new developer bought that project. So
Okay.
so we're not going to be back to the drawing board necessarily. It's going to be
Okay.
just go from there.
Okay.
I think it was just a financial thing.
Yeah.
Interest rates.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it looked like a pretty interesting project.
Yeah. So we will see that one come back. I think there might be a few minor things that are still, when I last looked at the COA for it, that might be hanging out there, some minor details and some other
Okay.
things. So it'll probably be back in front of us again.
Okay, yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
And I know there were some other things along the way, which, I guess, that entire strip mall next to it, I know there was a large proposal for that, and I'm guessing sometime this year we'll probably see something again.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything come back to me.
Is there any activity across from Lehigh Pizza at those two buildings?
Yes,
That's a good question.
Because the
there is.
Cornice front, the nogging is showing the bricks are ready to drop out. The
Yeah, there's some movement.
stucco fell forward.
movement on that project. It's in the development stages. It's not far enough along for me to discuss yet, but there's been discussions about that project.
I guess, while we're here, sorry to keep everyone another minute, but so how about the one across from the Benner building, that, along the Greenway?
That's newsstand. That section there by the Greenway, is that where you're?
Oh, South New Street?
Yeah, I guess that would be.
It is
New
South
Street.
New.
As you go up the hill.
That one's also been put kind of, I don't want to use the word shelved, but kind of put on hold because of interest rates right now. I just had a conversation with the developer last week.
Okay.
It does look like that project is going to move forward. It's just that
Okay.
hopefully I'm expecting design things and some things like that by before the end of the year.
Okay.
So within the next 6 months.
One of the things, if we're talking about amendments to the ordinance, one of the things that you might want to just kind of feel out and get the reaction to is whether or not we can put some limit on how long a COA
Valid.
is viable. I mean, we've got projects that got COAs 8-10 years ago.
Yeah.
Circumstances are different, buildings are different, the surroundings are different,
I mean, site approvals will run out too eventually at some point, right?
Yeah,
So
there is
I
no
think it makes
expiration on COAs. So, I mean, once again, I'll pass it along. And if there's any comments you see or you want to comment on anything, some of that stuff.
I think it's worth exploring to see what kind of reaction we get to it, but that would be helpful to have
That's a great point.
in our mix.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, just the complexion of the review board has changed
Sure.
in 10 years. And I've gotten older too.
Yeah, that didn't go through.
It's time.
All right, well, motion to adjourn, anyone?
Sure.
So
Motion to
We want to
adjourn.
save
Thank
these, that.
Yeah, we should.
Mike, should we leave whatever wasn't seen tonight, should we